Okay, keep your eyes closed.
Okay.
I want to show you my first ever painting.
All right.
Okay. Open your eyes.
Oh, that's a lot of colors and shapes.
So be honest. What do you think?
Well, I like how if you switch to Geico, you could save hundreds of dollars on car insurance.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Here, why don't I hold your paintbrush while you call them?
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
You're locked into Inception Radio Network, Superior, Wisconsin.
Hello everyone, welcome to Paraversal Universe on the Inception Radio Network. Brought to you by the Northern Wisconsin Paranormal Society Limited and the Northwoods Paranormal Resource Center here in Rylander, Wisconsin. We're your hosts, Kevin and Jennifer Mallett.
Hello everyone.
And hello to everybody in the IRN chat room. We look forward to your questions and comments as always. IRNchat.com is the link for the chat room, so come join us there. And this week we are covering conspiracies as well as aliens and UFOs with two respected ufologists, Derek Tyler, author of Alien Contact, The Difficult Truth, and Debra Jayne, host of Notes from the Underground. We'll bring them on in a minute after we do shoutouts for tonight. Shoutouts go to those who share our show banners this week on social media. Who do we have?
We have Darlene Keller, Cindy Lou, Paul Sinclair, Truth Proof, Beverly Bonin, Walter Brooks, Thoughts of Christos, Jason Bland, Jamie Demelos, Paranormal Soup, Howie Odell of The Rift.
And shout out to everyone in the chat room. Good to see you guys as always. So, both of our guests been on Paraversal Universe before, but not at the same time until now. Debra has been on twice over the years, including our panel presentation special on alien abductions. And the last time we had Derek on was before his book Alien Contact was released, which found its way to the #1 spot recently. We're all real good friends. We've known him for years. And so for this next hour, it will be a fun, relaxed, informative interview. Let's bring them on.
Yes.
Debra and Derek, are you with us?
I'm here.
Yes, sir. Good evening.
We are so glad you can come back. Yay!
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for having us back. I
I'm
appreciate
thrilled.
it. I'm always glad to be on your show, Kevin.
Right.
It's good to be with friends. It's good to be with friends.
So how is Washington treating you guys?
Now that the smoke's gone, it's much better. We had a big blanket of smoke here for about a week from the forest fires in British Columbia that was just about choking us out, but fortunately that's cleared up now. Other than that, it's been a gorgeous summer, but the best weather we've ever had here.
It's been really hectic since, Derek was on Coast to Coast and, his book went to #1. It's really been a whirlwind, but, we worked so hard, to get his book out there. It was really rewarding to finally see the book get the recognition that it deserved.
So how did you guys meet? Why don't we start with that?
Well, we were in that. We were both members of that chat group that I started on Facebook, and one day she posted a link for her radio show asking people to contact her if they wanted to tell their story or something. And I never paid any attention to those kind of things. I had no interest in being on radio at all at the time. But there was just something about the way she'd worded it or something that just convinced me to get a hold of her. I didn't really think that that my name would stand out among the crowd of people that probably responded to it, but that's the only time I've ever replied to a radio ad, and she picked me to be on her show, and as soon as we started talking, that was it. I was toast.
Well, what was really strange was I hadn't been I think I'd been doing radio for about 2 years, and I just really got tired of the same old guest, there's a lot of regulars out there, and I wanted to get the stories of everyday people and to hear what they had to say. And so I posted an ad in a couple of groups, and I got about 30 responses, but Derek's was the only one that stood out to me. It's like when I read his description of some of his experiences, it just made cold chills just pop out all over me. And I just knew he was telling the truth. And so much so that when I spoke to him on the phone, I did not want him to give his name out over my show because I feared for his life. And so I said, I've got to give you a fake name. And so I thought, what can I call him? So I called him UFO Charlie. And so we did 2 shows.
I was lobbying for Eric Clapton, but it didn't win.
And so that's how it all got started. And his research was so profound. I mean, this man has done so much research over the years. It was amazing. I had never spoken to anybody as well versed in ufology as Derek. And we just started talking, and I was all the way over in North Carolina. I moved all the way across the United States to research with him and to work with him, and it has been the best decision I made in my life. Never a dull moment in the UFO field, that's for sure.
Never a dull moment around here, that's for sure.
There are no such thing as dull moments.
That's right.
Nope, I've never been bored, and I've never had a dull moment that I can ever remember.
Yeah, reality is subjective. There's a lot going on. We are at what chapter?
We're on the 17th chapter of the book right now, and oh my God.
Gosh.
That is one book. I literally cannot put that book down.
Oh, that's good. I can't even remember what chapter 17 is.
Well, I'll tell you right here.
It was the abductions chapter, I believe.
Oh, yeah. That took me as much time to write that chapter as the whole rest of the book took, because it was quite difficult to convince myself to put those down to paper, because you have to relive them, in the process, and it was quite unpleasant. But they're difficult to talk about verbally, but I figured if I put them down in the book on paper, then I wouldn't be called on to discuss them verbally so much. People could get the information they wanted right there.
It's as much of a conspiracy book as it is a ufology book. Can you talk about it a little bit?
Well, the thing of it is, you're right about that. All the conspiracy theories that you hear about, they're all related to each other. They are all part of a network of conspiracies, which all ties together into one overarching conspiracy, which takes in all of those things and more. And one of the goals for the book was I felt that people deserve to have sort of call it a postgraduate course on ufology, because the typical book is written at about an 8th grade level, and basically most of them just rehash information that we've already heard before. How many books are there about Roswell by now? So I figured that people, some people at least, would be interested in more of an advanced level discussion. And one of my goals was to give people the opportunity, when they're done with the entire series that I'm writing, to be able to have a relatively complete and accurate picture of the situation, the big picture as it applies to us, because it's really an epic, enormous, complex deal, and it takes in many fields of knowledge and many different aspects. And in order to do that, I have to occasionally deviate from the topic of things that are directly involved with aliens, to supply some background information in some cases. And so I'm trying to do that while I keep the flow going, because at the conclusion of these books, I want people to be able to draw their own conclusions and to have all the information they need to do so.
Deborah, what's your favorite part about the book?
Well, I think the favorite part about my book is some of his first sightings. Especially, it's because of the way that he wrote it. You know, when he had went home to his parents for the weekend, and I believe it was there was supposed to be he had read in the paper that there was supposed to be the lights, you know.
Northern Lights.
Northern Lights. So he went out and he had a sighting of a UFO, and he went back to his house to tell his parents that he saw a UFO land close to a hospital. And the response from his parents was, "Oh, well, we've seen them. They didn't care." he couldn't get them excited at all.
I couldn't pay anybody to come out and look at the most amazing thing they'd ever seen in their lives. My dad said, "Saw one in the Navy, don't care." My mom said, "Well, if your dad doesn't care, I don't care." And all they would have had to do was pull their curtain aside, and they could have seen this UFO was lit up like the 4th of July, and it was huge, and you couldn't mistake it for anything else. It was about 3 feet off the ground. But I couldn't get anybody to look at it. I tried to call the newspaper. I tried to call the sheriff. They both hung up on me as soon as I said UFO. So I said, well, first I went and I grabbed their camera because they have a really nice camera. There wasn't a frame of film in that house. So I said, well, I'll just go out here and watch it by myself, I guess. Luckily, it lasted for over 40 minutes, so I had a good view of things.
Yeah, that was a heck of an encounter. And me and him, our jaws were to the floor when we read your parents' responses.
Yeah,
mine was too. That UFO sighting is the most unexpected thing that ever happened to me, and my parents' response was the second most unexpected thing.
That part was just really amazing. I love that, and plus, as you know, Derek's descriptive terms are probably the most detailed report of UFO sighting I've ever read. He got it right on the head about the size of the UFO, the colors, what it did. He even timed it. He knew how long it was there. He did all the right things, and I think that's what made it so powerful is the way that he described it. And if you haven't read it, I mean, it just makes the hair stand up on your head because you know without a shadow of a doubt what he saw was a UFO.
I spent 30 years after that trying to find a UFO that looked like that in any of the millions of UFO photos that have been posted online. I've looked through countless thousands of them, and I could never find a single one that looked like that. And then about 2 years ago, I guess, Debra found one in it's a hieroglyph from an old Egyptian temple, and it's exactly identical to the craft that I saw. I mean, if you draw around the inside edge of those lines, it's an exact match, and it has on each side of the craft is standing an alien gray, which taught me something I didn't know because I'd always wondered who was inside that craft. And I've learned since then that the Greys have an underground base near there, inside of a mountain called Mount Adams, which is it's a very large. I think it's the largest mountain in the Cascade Range. It's not the tallest, but it's the most massive. And they have a base inside that mountain. I wasn't told it was inside the mountain. I guessed that. And Jimmy Church proved it a couple of weeks ago. He took photos. He was up in the area, and he took photos of the mountain, and he happened to catch a big portal opening up and a UFO coming out of it near the top of the mountain. So that was interesting. No one had ever suspected that there was a base under that mountain. The mountain is mostly on an Indian reservation, and they consider it to be sacred ground. They don't allow anybody to go on that mountain. I grew up in that area, and I've never met a single person who's been on that mountain. And it was visible out my back door all my life when I was growing up. So it was quite an interesting thing.
No, that rings just like Delsey. You know, again, you got the reservation that's just right there. You got the mountain, and of course, in that scenario, they do know what's going on. You know, as far as I think the cat's out of the bag on that one.
I think they knew about this base too, and those jets. Because for those who haven't read the book, which is actually most people, a pair of F-16s arrived. They came blasting in from the direction of Fairchild Air Force Base, which is near Spokane. It's the closest Air Force base to the location. And a friend of mine in high school, his brother was stationed there as an F-16 pilot, and he told us that it takes almost exactly 20 minutes on afterburners to get from Fairchild to where we were at. And those jets arrived in about 20 minutes exactly, so they were scrambled immediately.
You know,
Okay, keep your eyes closed.
Okay.
I want to show you my first ever painting.
All right.
Okay. Open your eyes.
Oh, that's a lot of colors and shapes.
So be honest. What do you think?
Well, I like how if you switch to Geico, you could save hundreds of dollars on car insurance.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Here, why don't I hold your paintbrush while you call them?
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
the book has 20 chapters, like you say. Chapters like psychological warfare, for example.
Oh, that's a good one.
So, what thoughts come to both of your minds when I say psychological warfare? Ladies first. Why don't we start with Deb?
Well, when you say psychological warfare, I think of all the deceptive things that they have had to do to keep contact info from filtering down and giving us the truth about what's going on. I know last year in Canada, they had someone testify before a group of people that they had received a letter from the United States telling him not to disclose information about how many sightings of UFOs they had had in Canada. I mean, this was an actual threat that they would do something. This happens over and over. I mean, we can look at, in the field of ufology, at Phil Schneider, at, all of the greats who have come forward to give us the truth and something happens to them. So they do everything to psych you out. They will alter pictures. They will ruin your reputation. They will try to make you look like you're crazy. They have a big bag of tricks, don't they, Derek?
Yeah, psychological warfare, it's inescapable in this field of study. It's multi-layered. It is pervasive throughout the entire field of knowledge. They will stop at nothing, basically, to confuse us, to misdirect us, to distract us, to lead us down dead-end roads, to trick us into believing things that aren't true. All of those things will succeed because they're proven to be very effective. This is something that's done by people with master's degrees, and they're very good at what they do. What it does is it causes us to waste our time and energy chasing down blind alleys and bickering among ourselves and doing lots of things, everything except approaching the real secrets that they want to keep hidden, which are safe as long as they can keep us distracted somehow. And it's pervasive not just throughout the UFO community, but it is pervasive throughout this entire nation. Psychological warfare is being waged on every person in this country, every person in the Western world, really, through the television sets. They don't realize it. Some people think that they do. They think that everyone thinks that they're a little too smart to be taken in by that. Let me tell you, folks, you're not. They have people that are assigned to take care of people exactly like us. And the television is ever present in most people's houses. It uses a combination of very insidious methods, including neurolinguistic programming, sigil magic, hypnosis. The flicker rate on the television screen is precisely matched to the brainwave, the rate of the brainwave in the human alpha state, which is the state of mind which is logic is suspended, suggestibility is greatly increased. They use it for hypnosis. And it is impossible, literally impossible, to watch the television for more than a few minutes without becoming hypnotized. You'll never be aware of it. But that's why they have all those flashing lights and flashing half circles on the screen and countdowns and count-ups. Those are all hypnotic techniques. And you will be hypnotized, and then the TV will begin to give you your orders. And what the TV tells us to do, we have proven over many decades now, we do. So the best thing that you can do for yourselves, and the best advice I can ever give anyone, is shut your television off and leave it off. I haven't watched TV in 16 years now, and it's the best thing I ever did for myself. Believe me, that's one of the worst enemies you can have. A television was not invented to inform the masses or to entertain them. It was invented as a mind control device, and it is the most effective mind control device ever created.
Well, I'd just like to add that, disinformation started at Roswell. When it came out that there had been a crash, what did they do? They said it was weather balloons. They continue to do that. If there's a sighting in the sky, they'll say, oh, it was a plane, or it was a military exercise, or they just don't say anything. But their purpose is to cause us to doubt ourselves. And
by the way, also they send people into YouTube discussion comment channels. Anyone that posts a sighting of a UFO that they've filmed, it's guaranteed that there's going to be someone go there, at least one person, tell them how crazy and stupid they are for believing in these fairy tales. Not just most sightings, every single sighting you'll find that. Well, if someone really thought it was crazy, why would they be there in the first place looking at it? I wouldn't go watch a video that said it was pink elephants flying over my house. But that's, they're there all the time. Those people they pretend to be members of the public. They are not. They're professional disinformation agents, and the reason that they post these comments is to intimidate people, to prevent them from siding with the person who cited it or discussing it further. They'll try to divert the topic, or they'll try to make people think, well, I don't want to side with him. People think I'm crazy too. And it is very effective.
It is, and I'll say this. When Derek was on Coast to Coast, some of his interviews popped up, and when he was starting to get really popular, I noticed the same disinfo people would go on each broadcast, and they would post, they'd say, this guy sounds like the Area 51 caller. And I noticed it one time, I noticed it 2 times, 3 times. They would start a campaign. That's not really Derek Tyler, that is the Area 51 caller.
I took down one gal who tried that. I told her that I said, for me to deal with you, it's like my brain is like a mighty sturgeon surrounded by guppies when I'm dealing with you. I said, no, I have to go now, take care of some business, sturgeon business. Don't worry your pretty little head about it. I'll handle this.
I laughed my head off. I had to
say something.
You know what? You're right, though. I have noticed that too, and that is true. They have disinformation agents or people that go on popular threads, and their job is just to take shots at and try to discredit the guest any way possible.
Yes, and they've hired thousands of them to sign up with fake Facebook accounts, multiple fake Facebook accounts, right, and to try to get themselves on people's friends list by posing as someone that they're not and then monitoring them.
Yep. Yeah, and then, like in the chat groups, like we have Ultimate Conspiracies now. And like your old one, UFOs and Alien Contact, someone would come on and they start messaging, and it's like, oh, here's a first-time messenger, and right away, if they're one of them trolls, it just shows. And the best thing you do is just ban them, just ban them out of the group, because they're there to disrupt the group.
A few people can do a lot of damage. Yep. You get a few dozen. They've got thousands of people working on this, but even if you had a few dozen people and each of them was assigned to, a certain number of different forums, they could shut down the discussion over this whole country, by teaming up with each other and working all day at doing that. It doesn't take that much to derail a conversation.
I even saw him do it with Jimmy Church when he posted his video of that door on Mount Adams. They started attacking him, saying he was crazy, he made it up. They don't just do it to one person, they do it to all of us. They're hoping that we'll give up and get discouraged.
And there was a guy who was the head of one of the prominent disclosure groups that joined that discussion group Kevin and I were in. And I kicked him out after only a single day for using disinformation techniques against us.
Yeah, and we've been doing this long enough that we can recognize that.
And it was amazing to me how, for someone who's the head of a high-profile disclosure project, how little he seemed to know about the basics of the topic. Mm-hmm. It was amazing. I mean, all I did was I listed some reasons that disclosure is not going to happen, and he said, "Well, that's just speculation. And if you ever want to know anything about disclosure, you just get a hold of me. And if you want to talk seriously, well, it's not speculation. It's not speculation to say that there have been capital crimes committed in the name of covering this up. It's not speculation to think that if the truth were really told, the first thing that they're going to have to say is, we can't control our own airspace, and we never have. There are lots of things like this. So I just told the guy if he ever wanted to learn the basics about UFOs, to get a hold of me, and I kicked him out. Didn't know what else to do.
Derek's right. They're not going to indict themselves. They're not going to admit to all the horrible things that they've done. There's not going to be
disclosure. I know a lot of people are hoping for full public disclosure. Don't do it, because it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen in your lifetime. Eventually, there will be some form of disclosure, but when that happens, it will be the least amount of truth that they can manage to tell you with as much remaining concealed as they can figure out how to do. It's the very last option that our government will ever make use of, and I don't expect that to ever happen within our lifetimes. And there are too many arguments against it from their point of view.
And I would say if anything that people would label as disclosure were to happen, it would likely be some kind of false flag or just something that is not what it seems to be.
Right. The truth about alien contact is not pretty, and it's not pleasant, and it's not fun. Despite what all the starseed people would want you to believe, that's not how it is. The truth about alien contact is scary, and the more you learn about it, the more frightening it becomes. They don't kill people to prevent the news of a group of alien Santa Clauses who've come across space to help us with our enlightenment and our advancing to the next spiritual level. They don't kill people to prevent that. There would be no point in that. They kill them to prevent the real news, which is alien contact is scary as hell, from getting out. We are basically ants in an ant farm to them.
That's why when we hear about people trying to storm the White House to get them to admit that UFOs are real and everything, we just sort of, raise our eyebrows, because why are they going to do that? They would have to admit that they have known about zero energy, that they could feed the people of the world by making energy free and saving our planet from destruction with all the fumes from industries.
For decades.
Yeah. They would have to answer to that they have let people of the United States die, and they have put their best interest over ours. I mean, the black budget. I mean, I think of all the poor families and children that starve to death, that don't even have food and don't even have medical insurance. All that money that they have suppressed, that they have put in these black budget projects, it's from all of our pockets.
The network of underground bases and roads, which goes the length and breadth of our country, the price of that is estimated to have been at least $12 trillion, and they are still expanding that network. That alone is enough to almost pay off our national debt. That is just a small portion of what has actually gone into the black budget. They take money from NASA. They take money from all kinds of places that you wouldn't suspect. They've spent trillions upon trillions of dollars, and most of this black budget operations is not doing us any good as far as individual citizens of this country. We don't gain the benefits from it. It is being done for the benefit of those who are in power, and we are not intended to ever see any relief or ever see any of the benefits from it. They've got colonies on other planetary bodies in this system. They've got all kinds of things that they're capable of doing, but that technology is not released to the public because they don't want anyone else to get a hold of it but themselves. And when you have access to alien medical technology, which they do, which can extend your lifespan maybe 100 years or 200 years, they say sometimes, and then you have, when your body finally wears out, if you have access to a freshly waiting synthetic copy of your own self, it's like a clone, but it starts its life as an adult, and they can inject your consciousness right into it. That's the kind of technology level we're talking about. When you have access to that, and these people do, you have a recipe for eternal life. And when you have that, there's nobody you won't kill to protect your access. And
this is only the tip of the iceberg. I mean, most of the time when we find out about technology. They've already known about it for 50 years or more. So, I mean, I just can't imagine all the things that they have now that we don't know about.
Yeah, I had someone from the Pentagon, someone that I trust quite a bit, tell me once that some of the technology is eventually released to the public, but before it is, the military makes certain that they have such a lead in development that nobody can ever catch up to them. It's old, outdated, antiquated technology to the military when it's first released to the public.
All right, everybody. We will be right back. It is time for our first commercial break. We're listening to Paraversal Universe on the Inception Radio Network.
Paraversal Universe on the Inception Radio Network. Your hosts, Kevin and Jennifer Malik. And we're chatting with ufologists Derek Tyler and Debra Jayne East. But before we bring them back on, we'd like to take a minute and thank everyone that makes Paraversal Universe possible, including graphics art designer Lawrence D. Miza, webmaster Joe Champion, music by...
Okay, Kevin, for the grand prize of $1 million, what color is the White House?
I know this.
5 seconds.
Oh, switching to Geico could save you a bunch of money on car insurance?
Okay. Judges? That's true, Kevin. They'll allow it. Congratulations. You're a winner.
Woo! Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
by Matt Stens, producer Mike M.J. Lucas, and of course to God for granting us this wonderful show and opportunity here to be with you all. The segment is brought to you by Lucas Wellness and the UFO Wisconsin research team. We also have 3 Paraversal Universe like pages to check out. Also check out Jennifer Malik, Psychic Demonologist, Jennifer's like page, and of course the Northern Wisconsin Paranormal Society Limited like page. We have 2 group pages worth noting, Lake Monstrosities, which is the largest group page on Facebook for aquatic mysteries of lake monsters, and finally Ultimate Conspiracies, which is pretty much self-explanatory. If you have any questions for our guests, go to irnchat.com, go to our IRN chat room, where you can post questions and make comments, and Jenny will pass those along. Next week is another episode of Paranormal Blender, which is the end of the month news review. Paranormal 14, Supernatural, news, Ultra Bizarre, for the month of August. So we'll be covering all that next weekend. And we'll have Mike Lucas and Donald Young with us as well.
Gonna be great.
Yes. So, let's bring our guest back up.
Yeah.
I'd like to clarify something real quick, if I could, Kevin.
Absolutely.
I don't want anyone to think that I'm implying that all aliens are hostile to us when I say that the truth about alien contact is frightening. That's not the case. There certainly are aliens which are friendly towards humanity, but there are a number of people who take a very simplistic, in my opinion, approach. Some of them are very prominent ufologists. I won't name them by name, but there's one we'll just call Dr. Greep. He'd like to tell everyone that'll listen to him that all aliens are here to assist us and help us. Well, that is the dumbest conclusion I've ever heard in my life about alien contact. There are people within 100 yards of me who don't want to help and assist me. Don't tell me everyone in the galaxy has come here to help me, because that's ignorant. Anything that it's possible to find out there, we will find. We will find empires, we will find slavers, we will find people who just want to wipe us out, we'll find people who don't care about us at all, and we'll find some friends out there too. There's everything that you can imagine out there. We are surrounded by multiple alien races and multiple alien cultures and civilizations. They all have differing agendas. So the reason that I say that the truth about alien contact is frightening is because it's not because friends don't exist. It's because they don't appear to have any influence here, or at least not enough influence to assist us in a significant way. There's nobody that's ever been able to give me an example of a way that the friendly aliens have assisted us on a global basis. Contacting a few people in web forums with messages that could have been written by a 15-year-old is not the most efficient way to spread your message globally. That would mean we're dealing with aliens from the short bus. You know what I'm saying? And it's like they traveled all the way across space and they forgot to bring a radio or a bullhorn or even some leaflets to drop. So I simply don't buy it. They exist, but they seem to be limited for some reason in the amount of influence that they can exert here. The hostile aliens, however, seem to be in control of this world. They seem to be firmly in the driver's seat, and they don't plan on leaving. The rumors about the Dracos being driven out by the forces of light, it's just garbage. It's not true. If the hostile aliens leave, it won't be hard to tell. The first thing that'll happen is abductions will dwindle, and that hasn't happened.
Okay. So we have a question for the both of you from the chat room. In biblical times before Noah, humans lived for several hundred years, and after Noah and the Great Flood, life expectancy dropped dramatically. Does this mean that aliens may have stolen human secrets to long life during the Great Flood?
Well, one thing that was being done back in those days was, at least among the elite classes, was that they were making use of monoatomic gold. That is said to extend the human lifespan considerably. I think that it comes with some dangers that may not make it worth doing. But even that is referenced in the Bible. They don't call it monoatomic, but they call it, I think, this certain special kind of gold or something. And there's also reason to believe that the moon is an artificial object. That sounded like the craziest idea ever when I first heard it, but the more I check into it, the more confirmation comes from that. And if the moon is an artificial object and it was towed into orbit, what would happen on Earth? Well, the first thing that would happen is a great flood, because the oceans, the tides of the oceans would be massively disturbed, and you would have a biblical flood. So there's much about the moon that we are not being told. We're told that it was knocked out of a part of the Earth was knocked off in a collision with a mighty comet or asteroid or something. But the moon is a fourth the size of Earth, but it only has 1/6 of our gravity. That's really not possible unless the moon is made of something else besides what Earth is made of. And the craters on the moon are wide, but they're not deep enough. They should have a depth which is commensurate with their height, just like the Arizona meteor crater has. It's wide, but it's also very deep. The moon craters are very shallow, which would make one think that there is a surface underneath the dust, which is too hard to be dented by impact from meteors. There's a lot of things about the moon that don't make sense.
I might just add, too, that humanity has shortened its own life. You know, back in Noah's day, they didn't have all the pollutants and chemicals and all the things that we ingest in our food, and nanoparticles and chemtrails and all that kind of stuff, which has certainly lowered, the human lifespan.
Another thing sorry, go ahead, Deborah.
I just am thinking that, part of this is on our head, because as the population increased, people just don't care as much, and they want to decrease the population, so they don't really care if we ingest things that are poison or we breathe things that do harm to us.
And back then, saying that you had a long life was also a measure of the importance or the respect that someone had gained during their lifetime. If they were given credit for having a long life, it was someone who was considered to be important or respectful or respect-worthy, something like that. So some of those reported ages could have been fictionalized simply for the sake of making someone, in their terms, making it clear that that was a person to be reckoned with.
And I can tie both of what you guys said. I'm thinking here, and this applies to the next question we have too. And that, when you talk about antiquity and you have books like the Book of Giants, stuff that used to be canon even at one time that was pulled out, talking about things like genetic manipulation, genetic warfare, basically perverting God's creation, if you want to put it that way. And one of the chapters in your book is genetic warfare, and that's really at the heart, or it's one of the things at the heart of this insane agenda.
Yes, it's not been discussed, I don't think, by anyone until now. But the truth of it is, if you are alive, you are involved in genetic warfare. Your DNA will require it of you. It can't be avoided. It can't be evaded. There's no There's no surrender. There's no truce. It is the process of all DNA seeking dominance over all other DNA. It occurs within our own species. We compete against each other for goods and services and prominence and fame and wealth, and it occurs between species. And there is never going to be a time when an alien race is going to put our needs ahead of their own, because the simple fact that they have DNA will require them to preserve and protect their own DNA first and foremost before anything else.
Yeah.
I mean, why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they?
Everything tries to spread its DNA as widely as possible. If you have something like a black widow spider, the only job that it has in this world is to try to cover the entire face of planet Earth with other black widow spiders, little copies of itself. Fortunately, they're not able to do that, but that's what it's going to try to do. If you have an oak tree, it's going to try to produce enough seeds to cover the face of the planet with oak trees. And if they can choke out pine trees, they will. That's what genetic warfare is really all about.
I mean, some of these races are in panic. It's just like if we look at the species that are in jeopardy here on Earth, like gorillas and wolves and all these other animals that are becoming extinct. The same thing is happening right now to these alien races, and they're panicking. And
Earth has value because we have genetic diversity here.
Yes,
we are a lush paradise world with an incredible diversity of species in all possible ecological niches, from boiling water in the ocean to the frozen tundra in the north and everything in between, and the birds in the air and the insects. We've got a tremendous genetic diversity here, and that makes Earth very, very much valuable in their eyes. We are like a gem in the crown. I've heard that blue planets like this are around 1 in 10,000 planets. So we are not some ordinary world. We're something special, and right now we seem to be the center of a battlefield. Everybody wants a piece of us. Everybody wants part of our DNA, and they're fighting over who gets to control Earth.
So we have another question for you both from the chat room. What do the both of you imagine is the typical distance between civilizations? 100 light years, 1,000 light years? This would be between home worlds.
I don't know if there's a typical distance. I don't see how we could even accurately guess at something like that. I've heard, and I don't know that this is true, I've heard that there are around 2,500 known intelligent races in this galaxy, known to the aliens. We don't know about that many. I've heard that the government knows around 160 some at the last count, and the aliens don't seem to be filling us in on the existence of these other races. Most of the time, the way the government learns about them is one of their craft crashes to Earth, and we recover the bodies. So I don't know what the typical distance is. Some of them seem to be fairly close to us in galactic terms. In terms of light years, they don't seem to be all that far away. But these races have all basically overcome the sublight limitation, let's call it. They basically have learned to get here without worrying about not being able to break the speed of light. They've found a way to do it. They've obviously found ways to do it because they're here. And we are surrounded by them. There's a lot of them, and they all come here for different reasons. They fight among themselves. They all have different purposes. And we are isolated and alone on this one little blue world. We don't have any way to get off it without permission. They can stop us from going anywhere if they want to. That's why there hasn't been any manned space projects, which have gone past low Earth orbit now for 40 years, because we are quarantined. We don't get out of here unless they allow us. We have had manned missions which have gone past Earth orbit, but they are not made public, and we've had to get permission to do so, because we are kept under quarantine because we are like ants in an ant farm. Who would want us to be safely released to spread out among the galaxy? We're warlike, we're aggressive, we're stupid as rocks, and we're dangerous. I don't blame them.
I mean, on Earth, we don't even know our own history. We can't even look back, 20,000 years and give an accurate description.
This is
And
how dumb we are. We fight wars over color. That's how dumb we are.
True.
It's hidden from us. I mean, that's the concept behind secret societies, to keep the truth and the history from from everybody, to keep us in that state of
That's right.
ignorance and
everything we learned in school. It's a tapestry of lies. Lloyd Pye once said, "Everything you think you know is a lie," and he was right. Jordan Maxwell said, "Nothing really works the way we think it does," and he was right too. What we see is a tapestry of surface illusion, but the truth is covered up and protected by layers of deception, and nothing works the way you think it does. We're not intended to know about those things so that the people who have that knowledge, who are very few in number, can control us and manipulate us, and they do so very efficiently.
Well, I completely agree. If you look at what's going on in the world today, most of what we know is being put out there by them. And to me, it would seem like a cover for what is really going on behind the scenes to what they don't want us to know about.
Sure. Things like the story we're told of human evolution, it's not only true, it's impossible according to the tenets of evolution itself. You can't have a group of black folks wander out of Africa 80,000 years ago and today end up with Swedes and Chinese and Polynesians and Vietnamese and everything else. That's not how evolution works.
Yeah.
And to tell me that the angle of the sun being shallower in the north made black people turn into Swedes is insulting to my intelligence. You don't drop black people off in Switzerland or Sweden and come back in 10,000 years and find they've all become blonde and blue-eyed. What you find is black people still living in Switzerland and Sweden. That's how evolution really works.
You're right, and evolution basically is a giant disinformation scam that was put in motion a couple hundred years ago. And that brings me to the question I wrote down and a question we have in chat, or at least kind of reverts to it in some context. And that is, in your book, you talk about the theory about the Greys being humans from the future. Now, Jennifer and I aren't buying that, and apparently you guys don't either. I call it satanic propaganda or disinformation, or both.
Well, it's certainly disinformation, yes. There's no reason to believe that that's true. That's just a self-serving lie that they told us to manipulate us. There's no reason, first of all, to think that if we did evolve into another form, it would be that. Because physically they're inferior to us in every possible way physically. We're not going to have people like Lyle Alzado evolve into someone that's 35 pounds and 3 foot tall. That's not going to happen.
No. It's just impossible. So when they talk about that agenda, I'm thinking, use your heads, people. Use your heads. That's just not going to happen. There's so much disinformation out there. They use anything they can.
But the aliens they're perfectly capable of lying to us, and you have to consider that these beings have had civilizations which were capable of interstellar travel when we were still monkeys in trees. Okay? You're not going to fool them. You're not going to trick them with your human cleverness. When they've had civilization and diplomatic relations with other interstellar species for literally millions of years sometimes, we're not going to think of a trick they haven't seen before. It's foolish to think that we can.
You look at the discrepancies in skeletons that they found buried, in the ground. I'm sure all of you have seen pictures of skeletons that are 8, 9, 10 feet tall, are huge. I mean, we didn't just, weren't born giants and we got smaller to our size that we have now. There's a lot of discrepancies. And if you think about it, everything that has lived on Earth is buried on this Earth under layers of dust. That's why they keep on finding these civilizations. And I'm sure that the aliens, they've tweaked us several times. I mean, how can you explain somebody that's 12, 13 feet tall? I mean, the Bible talked about giants. And
that's why there's no missing link. The missing link doesn't exist. What we've had is a series of upgrades.
Yeah.
We've had a series of upgrades, and when the next upgrade comes along, the previous one conveniently vanishes. One day there's no such thing as a Neanderthal. The next day there they are, fully formed, living in social groups. But there's no Cro-Magnon. The next day there's a Cro-Magnon, fully formed, living in social groups. The Neanderthal conveniently disappear. And that's how it's gone time after time. People don't realize this, but the hominid, which is said to be our most direct and closest ancestor, does not have a single human bone in its body. Think about that. If someone showed me something which did not have a single human bone in its body, I would not consider that to be a close relative at all. I wouldn't consider it to even be a relative. And if it was, there would be required to be thousands upon thousands of intermediate forms between them and us. None of those forms are ever found, and they're not going to be found because they're not there. We are probably a genetic engineering experiment ourselves.
So we have about 10 minutes left, and there's one thing I wanted to ask you about last round, because I hear very few people talking about this. And
about what, Kevin? I couldn't hear you. Sorry.
Yeah. About black goo.
Oh man.
Yeah, black.
Can you? I mean, just take a few minutes and share with everyone the wonders and joy of black goo.
Well, this is something that, I've long had a feeling that I'm sure there are many things that are major concepts that I'm unaware of, but I've always had the feeling that there's something very important that I was missing. And a couple years ago, I heard about this black goo. Harold Kautzvella did an excellent interview on the Basis series about it, and I recommend that you listen to that, everyone, because it's a very fascinating thing. And it seems to be a conscious crystal, liquid crystal, which can affect those who come near it or touch it in a couple of ways. There's apparently a type of black goo which is indigenous to Earth, and it looks like a thick form of oil. It's just what it sounds like. And the major source for this on Earth is buried under the seafloor in the Gulf of Mexico. And the scoop on this is that the Deepwater Horizon, the oil rig which was responsible for that big spill a few years back, was actually not pumping oil. It was trying to pump this black goo out from beneath the floor of the ocean, and to put it in barrels and store it away where it couldn't be gotten to and couldn't be used. And somebody got wind of that, and a submarine fired a torpedo at that oil rig, is what I've heard. And that's what caused that oil spill. And that's why none of the civilians were allowed to help clean it up. They had to have people in chem suits, because this native black goo, apparently, it's like Gaia in a way. It's like the conscience of the world. And if you come into contact with it, it'll make you feel positive and joyful and compassionate and loving towards all your fellows and all this kind of thing. But there is another type of black goo which apparently is foreign to this world, and they think that it originated from some meteor crashes. It came from somewhere else. It's also possible that it was brought here intentionally. But it does the opposite thing. It makes you greedy and selfish and uncaring and hostile. And that kind of black goo is being spread worldwide. It is underneath most of the old cathedrals in Europe. It is the black stone of Mecca is made from a solidified type of this black goo, and all Muslims are required to go there once in their life and kiss it, and therefore be affected by it. And that's just the tip of the iceberg with this stuff. It seems to be conscious. It seems to be capable of manipulating societies on a wide scale if it is spread widely enough. It has been found in the rain in Germany. The rain touches them, it will affect them in that way. And that is, I don't really know too much more about it. I'd like to learn more about it, but it seems very sinister, and it seems very, it leads to the question of, how do we know that this black goo hasn't already taken over the minds of these hostile aliens and their whole planet and sent them here to do its bidding? I don't know.
It's scary to think about.
Can we be sure of that?
Yeah.
It is a very scary thought.
I know. And it's something most people haven't heard about, and that's why I wanted you to talk about that a little bit.
Harold Kautzvella is very good. He's a German scientist, but he's also he's kind of a hippie scientist in a way. He's got a very open mind, and he's very precise and accurate in his statements. And look up the Bases series with host Miles Johnston and listen to his interview, because it's about a 2-hour interview, but when you get to about an hour into this interview, he's going to start to make your brain melt with some of the things he says. It is absolutely fascinating.
We've listened to it several times, and each time we learn something new from
about
his.
Morgellons and Black
Yes,
Jews.
It's very well worth listening to.
Sounds like something that I need to post on my timeline.
There's another guy that you should look up on YouTube. His name is Dr. Barry Trower, Barrie Trower. He's a British polymath, spy master. He's one of the most intelligent people in the world, and he is an expert on microwave weaponry and how it is used against us by our own people. And you should look him up and listen to what he has to say about it, because it is absolutely terrifying what they can do now with microwave weaponry and tight beam electronics.
So we have 3 minutes left. So we need to share links and
Any up-and-coming projects, if people need to get a hold of you.
and where they can find your book, Alien Contact, The Difficult Truth at.
It's available on Amazon. It's Alien Contact, The Difficult Truth. I've got another, volume 2 of this. It's going to be a series. Volume 2 is in the process of being written. I expect to have it released within the next couple of months or so. It will be called Alien Contact Paradigm Shift, and it will continue the discussion and examination of these topics. There is not a word of fiction in any of these books. I don't have time for fiction. I don't have time for hoaxes. It's too important to mess around with things like that. I simply won't have it. So, to the best of my ability, everything in that book is the truth, and it will make your jaw drop and your head spin. I guarantee it.
You can reach me on Facebook, Debra Jayne East. Also, I have Notes from the Underground, which is a face for my radio show. And Derek also has a Facebook page for his book, Alien Contact, The Difficult Truth. And I'm working on my book called Synchronicity, which is my story of UFO exposure from when we were growing up, and some of my research on helping abductees, because they have problems sleeping and all this different type of things. And this runs in families. And, Derek has interviewed thousands, 3,000 or 4,000 people that have been abducted, and I've probably interviewed at least 1,000. It's an ongoing problem, and nobody is helping them. So we want to do what we can to give people peace of mind.
Yes, you can find me on Facebook. It's at facebook.com/Derek Tyler it's facebook.com/Derek Tyler 665. I used to have a T-shirt once that said 665 Neighbor of the Beast, and I thought it was so funny. I had to pick a number for my name, so I used that.
All right. Well, everybody, really quickly, like they said, if you have not got a chance to get this book, I highly recommend that you get a copy of this book. You will never look at things the same way again after you read this book, believe me.
To the believer, the evidence is overwhelming.
And to the skeptics, there will never be enough.
I took a chapter in this book to bury those skeptics so deep they'll never crawl out of that hole. That's a fact. The only part of the book that was fun to write was that.
I just want to say you guys are wonderful in your own right. Both of you do extensive
Absolutely.
research, and we just want to tip our hats to you, because without you for your support and all the work that we do, we wouldn't be able to do it. And
that's right.
I'm sure you know how difficult it can be sometimes, and I'm looking forward to the book that you guys are writing, and just want to wish you all the best of luck.
And thank you for having us back on your show.
Yes.
Appreciate it, and we'll be glad to be on your show anytime you want us to.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Have a good night and a good weekend, and good night, everyone.
Daddy, where do babies come from?
Honey?
Mommy went to the store.
Oh, well, you see, there's a mommy and a daddy, right?
Right.
And see, when they call Geico, they could save a bunch of money on car insurance.
Oh, really? And that makes them happy?
Yes, that makes them very happy.
That's good.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we could have this talk, Sunshine.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.